Thank you very much. Today we will talk about the role gets tokenized. Before we start, I would like to get a little bit of an idea from the audience, because if we do a panel discussion, we need to basically know what's the level here. So, any one of you owns Bitcoin here? Please raise your hands. Okay, at least some. So what about the other ones? Are those people who are interested in technology? Are you here because of finance? Who's here because it's like something which is interesting from a financial perspective? Okay, some. Who is here because they are programmers, for example? I don't think so much. Okay, some, that's good. Okay, gives us, I think, a kind of a good idea. So I want to start like the world gets tokenized, what does it mean? So in the beginning, everything in cryptocurrency and blockchain was about cryptocurrencies, but technically it's a kind of a small part of it. And I think the longer this industry is growing, the more interesting it gets, and definitely it's get interesting when we're talking about tokenization. Because what you can do is like you can tokenize securities, you can tokenize assets, and many, many more things. So I would like to start, so everyone should give a short introduction about themselves. So Peter, would you be so friendly? Oh yeah, let's start with the ladies, sorry. Ladies first, let's do it this way.
You already heard my talk. My name is Arifa Khan. I founded a company called Himalaya Capital Exchange, which is a platform for security token issuance. So we've all heard about the evolution of tokens. So first came Bitcoin in 2008. We are currently at the fourth stage of the token evolution. So after Bitcoin, there were multiple cryptocurrencies, but they were all just substituting for payments. And then the next phase was the enterprise blockchain, where all the big players like IBM and Microsoft and many other big four consultancy firms, they all got into blockchain and they started developing enterprise applications for other corporates. And then came the third level, where we had decentralized applications. And this was boosted in no measure by the ICO phenomena we saw in 2017, where there were about 1,000 ICOs, which all raised about $5.5 billion. And in 2018, we have surpassed that amount and we have raised $12 billion. So that was the third phase of decentralized applications, which were more targeted at consumers, at things that we all use. And now we are currently in the fourth phase, where we are tokenizing just about everything, which is including securities, which we will talk more about.
Yes. Hi guys, my name is Kambiz. I'm the co-founder and also the CEO of EdgeCoin. EdgeCoin is basically a blockchain as a service for educational stakeholders. So we try to, my background is digital marketing and online marketing. So we are talking about digital transformation, and tokenization is actually the big word. I came across blockchain technology by buying bitcoins, and I found that this is a splendid technology to get to use in different fields of our lives. And education was for me a passion. I like to get people educated, because I think if people are educated enough, we will get rid of all problems that we have. So that's just a short background to myself.
Thank you for the background. Yeah, I think you're very right. The education is one of the most important things. So anyway, my name is Peter. I'm based in London. I'm a co-director of Startup Grind. How many of you heard about the Startup Grind before? Okay, Startup Grind, yeah. Startup Grind is the world's largest entrepreneurial community. We're in 500 cities, 150 countries, and we're just opening the Malta chapter here. My background is I used to work at University College London, an entrepreneurial department, and I run a company called Supreme Factory, which is kind of we help blockchain startups get on board, mostly on pro bono basis. So we're kind of here to support the industry as much as possible.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. No. My name is Jürgen Höbert. I'm originally from Austria. I live since 10 years now in Hong Kong. I'm involved in this, how to call it, business, like internet business since ever, like since pre-Google even. So it's very natural for me, like that something like digital currencies was interesting. I think I came across it first 2012, but more like on a completely different environment in the new media art space. And then kind of I got very attracted to it like 2014. It was interesting, but it was just like Bitcoin going back and forward. And then I think where for me it was really getting interesting was when I was reading the Ethereum proposal, because it was about smart contracts and then basically all the things which now are basically based on smart contracts. Well, now we can do tokenization, which is very great. And I'm basically now full into the whole of this industry, like I think there's a lot of you. Yeah, I would like to start, and I think I would like to start with Arifa, I think, because you were mentioning you are running a security token exchange or is platform. Okay, so for you it's like something, as we know, security token platform is basically tokenized securities. So how do you see it? Which kind of securities you would like to offer on your platform? Because there can be equity, you know, all these different things.
That's a very interesting question, because we did see security tokens even last year, and in fact the origin of security tokens was with the blockchain capital, which was much before the ICO craze. This was probably in 2016.
Yes.
And before that was the DAO. DAO was the first ever security that was created, just that nobody knew it was a security. And no one cared whether it would be classified as a security, but it was 100% security. There is not 1% probability that it was not a security. So we didn't have to wait until SEC came and classified it as security. So the security token history started with the DAO, I think in 2015, and then blockchain capital in 2016. But these were bespoke securities, right? So DAO was a venture capital fund, and therefore if I created this venture capital fund and gave you a share in this VC fund, then I'm giving you a security token. So blockchain capital once again was a VC fund where I created this VC fund and I gave a token to each of the investors, which is a security token. So these are bespoke securities. And now as the security tokens have come into mainstream and more people are familiar, just outside I saw the stable diamond coin, which is backed by a real diamond. So we saw many such security tokens before, some backed by gold, some backed by US dollar, some backed by a durian tree, like a mango tree. Like you would give a security token backed by a mango tree, and some people would share the ownership of the tree by possessing the tokens. So we have seen all kinds of bespoke security tokens. But the distinction is, these are not traditional financial securities. What is a traditional financial security? Traditional financial security is a stock, like a share in a real company or a bond. And it actually represents ownership in a real company with entitlements such as dividends, share and profits, voting rights, and so on. So these are the traditional financial instruments that Wall Street is composed of, and just these securities are about 87 to 100 trillion dollars, just the financial securities.
Maybe just one interruption before to put it in perspective for people who are not familiar with those terms like security token and utility token. Maybe to explain it, then you can go ahead. We're talking about security tokens, which is actually the next step in the evolution regarding tokenization, because we bring real world values in a digital form and put it into tokens. We symbolize them. We have a symbol for a real asset out there in the real world. So, but the beginning of this evolution was to begin with utility token, utility tokens that are used basically in ICOs, and they are not representing a real asset or real value. They are not an entitlement, so to say. They are just access token or access point to an ecosystem or to a service. So just on an IPO, he's making a security token offering,
and I, for example, own 1% of his equity in the form of a security token, which is basically tokenized equity. What I would be interested to ask you is, because you are from the startup industry, how do you see all of this fitting together with the traditional startup industry?
Well, it's a hard one. But, well, first of all, I see that there are three types of tokens: utility, security, and assets tokens. So I think eventually all the tokens will become securities. This is where the world is going. It's my opinion. But when when it comes to startup land, I see many people are just copying the successful startups and trying to tokenize them, and they're actually doing quite well. So I see that kind of, it's one Me Too trend that is going quite strong. Apart from that, that would be it from the startup land, I suppose.
I just want to complete my previous
Sorry.
Okay, so the securities land, the traditional financial securities land, which are 87 to 100 trillion dollars, and if you include all the assets, then it is a $500 trillion market. Now, to give you a distinction, last year we had 1,000 cryptocurrencies or ICOs, but can everything be ICO? So can you create a utility token for every company in every industry? The answer is no. But look at the securities industry, which has shares and bonds. Can everything be converted into a security token? The answer is yes. So that's the surprise. So the $87 trillion or the $100 trillion industry, potentially everything can be tokenized. So I envisage a future where the Microsofts of the world, the Facebooks of the world, and the Apples of the world already have shares, and they will try to issue this crypto class of new shares. That these are the Apples, Microsofts and stuff. Second is companies that have never gone public, they have a choice to do either an IPO or to issue an initial security token offering, and there is no difference between the two. And by the way, just yesterday NASDAQ has come up with an announcement that they will be creating the infrastructure for initial security token offerings. That's exactly what I want to do. That's exactly what HCX wants to do.
Yeah, that's a very good point, but I would like to draw the conversation a little bit further, because security tokens is only one issue. So maybe we talk about things like, who here on the panel has heard about NFTs, like non-fungible tokens? Yes, so for example, you can imagine like this, because we're talking a lot about financial, but the whole thing is technically a little bit about more. So imagine, like my son was born that's 8 months ago, and nowadays if you have a birth certificate, you have your citizenship, your passport, and everything is in a kind of, in a paper form. So if you go somewhere, or if I did my university in London, and then I studied in Hong Kong, and you need to send physically a paper over from one university to the other one, that I basically, my certificate is legit. So imagine you could tokenize even like all your certificates. Or like even on everyone here in the audience, if I'm asking you, prove me you own your house, you cannot technically prove it. Basically, you need to go to the land register, look there. So imagine you would have like something like a token, which is not only currency, which is just a representation that you own this property. You can think this much, much further. Like, for example, if you buy a new car, let's say you buy a Tesla, and it comes with a digital representation. So if you want to apply for insurance, you just go to the website, send them the kind of token which represents your car, and you would automatically get an insurance. So things like this going very further. What I wanted to ask you, because we were having a discussion about this before, how do you think that all this kind of tokenization fits into this greater world of digitalization?
First of all, I wanted to say something about what you've said about the non-functional tokens. Actually, what we are doing with Edgecoin is exactly that. We are bringing papers, certificates, diplomas, whatever, into a digital state, and this is for a smart contract that represents this value, this this non-functional value. This, you have gathered knowledge, and now you have a certificate, and this is what we do. And we validate it also because the data is hashed, it's encrypted, it's immutable, and you can make it accessible for machines, but also for humans, human interaction. So basically, what HCoin does. And to your question, I talked about the digital transformation. Most of you guys heard about it in your company when you are starting up a new tool that will raise or increase your productivity in the company. This is what you think is the digital transformation. Yeah, it is the digital transformation, but it is probably the first step towards the whole digitalization of assets. So tokenization is basically the next step in this let's say timeline, where not only tools, infrastructure, and solutions that are used by humans are digitalized, but also everything that interacts with those infrastructures and with those tools that we are using. So also the assets, the entitlements that we are using every day to make progress or make things work. So to answer your question, yes, this is the next step and not the last step, probably.
Yeah, well, I think that tokenization will take place where the biggest problems occurs, and that's most of it. It comes from the data, who holds the data, and therefore, we recently had so many breaches with the Facebook, with the elections and stuff, and GDPR, and I think that's where the tokenization will really take care of that. So, working on identification, who holds your data, who owns it. It's much better where you have like decentralized data storage that's accessible only with your permission. And I think world will change once that happened economically, because today we give our data freely to Facebook, Google, and other stuff. Even though I work with Google, I tell this to everyone. And these companies, they're using this data against us to manipulate us, to serve us the best ads. So what I see happens with data after the tokenization is we're going to be able to sell our data to these companies or other companies and get paid for it, which is just the first scenario I see it's going to take place. I mean, there are so many others, but yeah, this would be just the beginning.
I could ask you a shorter question, because we're selling data. How do you see this combination of Internet of Things and tokenization?
Yeah, well, there is also already IOTA and other tokens that are in the terms of IoT, and you spoke about the IoT as well. Connected worlds is a different thing. I personally worked at UCL at the Device Lab, and we work quite a lot on and we're still working on part of the London to become more like a smart city, smart streets, smart villages, and it's so hard. It always comes to data at the end of the day, and I know if you automated data with smart contracts, you know who owns the right, who gets paid, that's just lovely. And then if you put the cryptography on top of it, because most of the IoT is now leaking the security, I think that would be like a perfect match.
I would like to round up that every one of us giving like maybe a 1.5 and 2 minute idea how they see what gets tokenized, like within the next 2 years, and maybe can give some examples. Could you start, please?
Okay. I think I see a lot of subjective, intangible factors getting tokenized, and the top of them would be reputation, for example. Reputation, trust, loyalty, even expertise. So, reputation, for example, like if there is a community voting on somebody's reputation, then you have 100 tokens of reputation and I have 90 tokens of reputation, right? So your reputation is better. So then these tokens can be used somewhere, either to display or either to stake and stuff. So similarly, trust. if corporates are building trust with their employees or with consumers and so on, these can be tokenized. And so is loyalty, like frequent flyer miles, or if you're a regular recurring customer of a corporate, then you get loyalty points. These are eminently tokenizable, because earlier you had miles in cards and you can't carry around thousands of cards. So if you have a digital representation of the same loyalty card, you can have 1 million cards, and you can have a passport which carry these million cryptocurrencies as well. And expertise is another thing, like whether you're a professor or a lawyer or a blockchain speaker, right? Instead of being ignorant of who is a better speaker or not, you can have tokens where each conference organizer or the audience awards you a certain number of tokens for your speech. So these kind of both subjective and objective factors we will see increasingly getting tokenized, and we will even see individuals printing their own currencies, which is highly subjective. It's like a brand, it's like a celebrity brand. Like Michael Jackson has like so many number of tokens, and Donald Trump has like some other tokens. And do you wish to subscribe to Donald Trump token, or somebody else?
Do you see like tokens that you've used on YouTube and Instagram Live?
Yes. yes.
So the question was, what comes next, right? Yeah. Everything can be tokenized, but we have a long way ahead, because as long as we do not have a comprehensive legal framework for all of these digital entitlements that we are talking about, as long as we don't have this, it's all dreams, nothing else. But we are here to understand and to pursue this, let's say, dream or this ideal of a world that is digitalized as a whole. So, and the next sectors that I think, or industries that I think would push this development would be actually education, for example. So people need to get educated, and the education should get rid of borders, rid of not only borders but also control by third parties or intermediaries. The next and very predestined industry is for me logistics, so supply chain management. It's basically what is very, very exciting and intriguing for me to see what will comes next, because big ones like IBM are developing, for example, chips that are specially designed to be attached to products to basically show the whole supply chain, how they are, let's say, harvested but at the farmer's farm, and going through the supply chain through the world and land on your kitchen table or something like this. So I think logistics, education, and legal as a big industry to support all of this. For example, what is it? What a smart contract? I mean, we have talked about a previous speaker talked about the basic nature of contracts. It's an agreement, right? But we have a smart contract. So what is it? It's a digital form of agreement. We have email. It can be also agreement. It's legally binding. But what is about smart contracts? That smart contracts that they're public. They can be public, and they can also be destructed. To build up a new smart contract with new information out of the old and the new one. So what is all of this legal framework is pretty. I mean, it's very interesting to watch and maybe to support this development.
So, well, I agree with you completely. I think supply chain is one of the biggest issues, as mentioned previously, where you see the biggest problems. You'll see tokenization. So, for example, in the UK recently, there were a few kind of people died because of eating stuff. There were nuts, kind of transparent what's inside, where it was produced. So we all eat different things. We don't know. So that will be a law in America. I think Walmart is now using IBM's Hyperledger Fabric technology now mandatory for all the suppliers, which is good move. But in general, I think revolution will be tokenized, and that's basically a slogan of supreme factor of my company. Why I say this, because back in the 60s there was a catchphrase called "Revolution will not be televised" by Jill Scott Heron. And it basically, back in the 60s and 70s, you see this kind of big technological revolution that just went down because people didn't manage the flow quite kind of in ethical, sustainable way. And I think what's happening with the tokenization when it comes to blockchain, cryptography, is that we are taking like normal human path, very ethical and sustainable. And that's why I believe it's really going to change the world, and it's basically, revolution will be tokenized. That's why.
Yes, I think that were very good words. What I want to add is, nowadays we live in a time where basically information is flowing instantaneously. So basically, if I want to call now someone in Brazil, I can do this immediately. If something happens in Argentina, the whole world knows it within 5 minutes. And just imagine, as you were saying, referring to history, like East Indian Trading Company, how long it took to get information from India to London and from London back. It's unimaginable nowadays. Imagine how complicated it is now to buy a property in Rwanda. It's ridiculous as it sounds, as example. But through tokenization, it's basically the same final step. It's like, I want to buy property anywhere on this planet, I can do it. I want to buy jewelry which lies in a store in Angola, I can do it. Things like this is basically, for me, it's like tokenization. The end result is like, which we see in the information age. It's basically, you can have access to anything you want at real time, instantaneously, globally, as long as there's internet. That's the only disadvantage. So, I don't know how much time do we have? 2 minutes. One question, anyone? Okay. So basically you mean there's a storage data problem, or?
Why should people store data, for example? Why should people keep up those
The thing is, like, people see this very abstract. So if you talk about blockchain, you know about the hash, what a hash is. Like, I have a Google document which is like 3 GB large, and I hash it, which generates one unified code, and this is what I'm storing on the blockchain. But like, this is how much bits are there? Like,
for example.
16 KB, so that's like nothing. It's like, memory is not, nowadays if you talk in computer, memory is never a problem. It's processing power, and it's basically speed. These are the two limitations. So for a blockchain, it's like, as you say, there's no problem. I can issue $10 billion now on Ethereum, and let's say like each passport is, the data set which is generated is so limited. I mean, the question is, and you were correct, so on which blockchain, there is at the moment no standard. So there are standards, like if you talk about security tokens, basically I think there are out like 6 prominent ones. Then there's now just Ethereum Foundation came out, but I'm also not 100% believer that Ethereum will survive. Because, you know, this whole space is in a, how to say it, in a very flux, and technically it sounds ridiculous, but we are not further than Atari times in the gaming industry. Basically we just have made Pong, you know, this simple game. That's basically what Bitcoin is. We are a little bit further where Atari is, and if you look in the history how Atari company behaved as a company and their employees, it's very similar to what's happening in the ICO space, for example. But now this industry is growing up. The only disadvantage nowadays, because we have this information layer, everyone is very easily attracted. So someone was saying, oh, you can raise $100 million in 2 days. And everyone's like, yeah, that I want to do. But what I didn't know, those guys who were doing this are in the industry in 6 years. So I know we did ICOs back in 2006, and you raised $5 million by 2 seconds. But everyone was knowing this guy who was doing it. And nowadays it's like people are just, oh, they were attracted by this fast pace, but they don't have a history. I mean, like security tokens is basically a very good example, because this whole concept was never built about purely fundraising. And normally what I say to a project is never ask what you do for the project. And the idea was ask what you can do for the project. So never ask what the project just does for you. Because the original intention of a utility token was, someone wants to build a service, I want to go to the moon, but I do not have the money now to go to the moon, so I'm subsidizing, like crowdfunding someone and give him, but hey, if you make it happen to go to the moon, I have a ticket to go there. This was kind of the original deal. Sorry, a little bit overstretched now.
Yes, thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think what is now break or?
Okay, if you have more questions, then during coffee break that will start in half an hour, you can continue and ask our speakers. But now we will have another panel discussion about ICO, so I'm welcoming David Gyori, Stefano Tresca, Max Krubish, Leonardo Bonello, Navid Brecht, and Joseph